In this exercise, we're going to look at computing property tax capacity and property tax effort statistics. These are statistics that are used to compare cities with one another or counties with one another. All cities and counties require property taxes as one of their main revenue sources. Now I'm going to just look at cities, and in particular I'm looking at cities in Iowa. But we care a lot about our property tax base because it is an important part of funding city government services, especially those that are considered essential government services like police and fire and some of the other essential components that constitute either public safety or general community welfare. Now, when we're trying to compare one city with another and we're trying to get a handle on the ability of a community to generate revenues or the amount of revenues that it's generated, there are three numbers that we have to begin with. First of all, we have to compare like cities with like cities. That means you don't compare a city that's 500 with a city that's 50,000. So we need to think of our cities in terms of logical groupings. And of course, we need the population of a city if we're going to compare or going to characterize that city. The next thing we need to know is the property tax base, and that is the amount of valuation, property taxable valuation. So we need to know what the tax base is, how it's defined, and how large it is. Third, we want to know what the property tax levy is. The property tax levy is the amount of money that a city needs to run its government over the course of a fiscal year. And the levy, the amount of money it needs, divided by its taxable valuation, gives us the rate, or the rate that must be applied to everybody's valuation to generate the taxes that are needed. So let's just start out in this exercise with a grouping of communities that are population 2,500 to just under 10,000. But for fiscal 2012, the average valuation per capita for those cities was $26,000. So all of the valuation in the previous slide was divided by all of the population that we talked about in the previous slide. And that value per capita, per head, was $26,163. Now, the levy, the property tax levy for the average city of that size in fiscal 12 was $365. And then again, that was arrived at by dividing the total property tax levy for all of the cities in that group by the number of people, $365. Now, the property tax rate required to generate those taxes was $13.9691 per $1,000 of valuation. Remember, in Iowa and in many states, the valuation is expressed on a per $1,000 of valuation basis. So the way that this valuation generated those revenues was to multiply 13.9691 times the total amount of valuation for that entire group, divided by 1,000 because it's being expressed on a per 1,000 basis, and then again divided by the number of people. Average taxes per capita would be the answer. So here we have a group of communities. This is just a listing of those beginning with A through down through C. And what we have here is those three basic numbers that we were talking about. First of all, we have their census, their population number. We have their valuation, and we have their property taxes. Now, every one of these numbers, though, has been expressed on a per capita basis for each of these communities, as well as the property tax rate. Remember, the property tax rate is the rate that was required to generate the taxes that were necessary for that community. And you can see, using all three of these measures, that there's extreme variation. We can see that the property tax rate ranged from a low of around 10.3 per thousand to a high of 18.999 per thousand in Albia. You can see that valuation per capita ranged quite a lot, from 34,900 and some in Algona down to 17,900 and some in Anamosa. And we can see that the property taxes that are generated per capita range quite a lot as well. Now the trick here is figuring out a way to compare these communities in a manner that helps us make sense, that helps us understand whether they're overtaxing or undertaxing, if they have a high ability or a low ability to generate property taxes. And that's what the property tax capacity and effort statistic will do. Many people will just look at property tax rates and draw conclusions as to whether a community is a high or a low tax community. But what you really need to understand is the ability of the region or the community to generate property taxes. So the first statistic we're going to look at, and the first statistic that we care about, is property tax capacity. And that's the ability of a community or a county to generate revenue. The second statistic we look at is called its property tax effort. And property tax effort merely is a measure of how much of your capacity you are using. We begin with logical city groupings and to make sure that we're comparing similar cities with one another. Again, you don't compare a small city with a large city. You compare similar cities with one another. I'm going to show you how to do this, but property tax capacity, again, we're going to do a separate statistic for logical groupings of cities under 500, let's say 500 to 2,500, 2,500 to 10,000. You get the idea. Well, all capacity is, it's a very simple statistic. It's the per capita valuation locally divided by the per capita valuation for your city class. I've gone back 2 slides. So if I'm calculating the capacity for Adel, it's the valuation per capita, right here, for Adel, divided by the valuation for its city class. And you can see right now that the valuation per capita in Adel is greater than the valuation per capita for the group. The property tax effort is a different statistic. It tells us how much of our capacity we are using. And again, it's going to depend in part on the characteristics of the group that you're comparing yourself to. It is compiled of property taxes per capita locally divided by your local valuation per capita times the city group average tax rate. So if I go back a few slides, our effort for Adel is going to be a function of taxes per capita locally, right here, $411.97, divided by our valuation per capita in Adel times the city average tax rate. For Iowa, we get the basic information that we need to do these types of calculations from the Iowa Department of Management website, and we go down to the local budget and finance division of the Iowa Department of Management because that division has to certify every city, county, and school district's budget. So we're going to go to the local budget and finance division, and then I'm going to go down to city data and forms. I'm going to click on that. And now what I'm going to do is pull up. I'm going to look at city tax rates. You can see it down here. For fiscal year 2014, I'm going to pull up a file of the city tax rates for 2014. When I downloaded the file, this is the way it came up. It shows us by county the number of cities. It has our population. It has our valuation, our regular valuation, the valuation that's available for general fund purposes. And it has our tax rate way out here on the end. It has our tax rate. Now what I'm going to do is process this a little bit quickly so that we can get to teaching instead of messing with a spreadsheet. I've processed this spreadsheet. What I did was I took the spreadsheet and I sorted it by community from top to bottom. So Des Moines is my largest community, and it would go all the way down to the smallest community in Iowa. Again, what do I need to do the information that I'm going to be, or the information that we're going to be generating here? We're going to need population. We're going to need valuation. And we're going to need the total regular property tax levy right here, this column right here. So I'm going to real quickly here just hide the rest of this stuff because we don't care about it. I'm going to hide it. And we're going to begin our process of generating our property tax capacity and effort statistics for all of the communities in Iowa that are over 50,000 in population. We're going to have to generate some new statistics here. First thing we need is the total property tax levy, and we're going to back this out from the data that's available here. Next, we're going to have our per capita valuation, and we're going to have our capita levy or property taxes, and then we'll calculate our capacity and our effort. The property tax levy, the total levy that was generated, is simply going to be the property tax rate, that's this number, the total regular rate, divided by 1,000. Remember, it's expressed per 1,000 times the valuation. And so we'll format this with commas and make it look pretty. Copy it down to the end. So Des Moines had $111 million worth of property tax-based revenues and this is for fiscal 2013-2014. And you can see the value going down as we move down this category. Okay, per capita valuation. Well, valuation is going to be first, it's going to be the total valuation here divided by the population. And again, we're going to format that so it looks pretty. And we're going to copy it down. So Des Moines' valuation is $32,400 per person, contrasted with West Des Moines' valuation at $69,312. You can see that the valuation varies quite a lot. Sioux City, it's $27,509. The per capita levy is going to be the property tax levy divided by the population. Now, this data set is using 2010 population numbers because they have to by law. To do this appropriately, one would use the estimates for the year as close as possible to 2014. We have 2012 city population estimates. So were I normally doing this for a community, I would replace that 2010 column of population with 2012 estimates. But for the time being, we're going to go with these numbers because we're not that far away from 2010. Let's give this 2 decimal points just for kicks. And there we go. And so the property tax levy, the per capita levy, also ranges quite a bit from Sioux City, $446, almost $447, $428 in Ames, where I'm located, $415 in Dubuque, to as high as $835. Now you might look at this and say, wow, West Des Moines is a high property tax city. Well, what's what we're going to use the capacity and effort indicators to tell us? And you might look at Ames or Sioux City or Dubuque and say, oh, those are low property tax cities. Well, what we do is we use the capacity and effort indicators to help us understand whether that's true or not. I need 2 more numbers here. I need per capita values for the group average. And so I'm going to sum the group's total valuation, and I'm going to sum the group's total property taxes. And of course, I need to sum their population. And then I'm going to copy down these 2 formulas. And I'm going to get average characteristics for the group. And let's highlight this with a different color here very quickly. We'll make it yellow just so that I remember that this is the group average. For any community then, their capacity is going to be their per capita valuation divided by the group average. And I'm going to put a $sign in front of that 17 because I'm always dividing by that row. And it's 0.82. Now you can multiply this times 100 or express it as a percentage basis. So I'm going to just express it as a percentage basis. Des Moines' capacity is 82% of the group average. Let's multiply this down. And we can see that we have quite a range. Sioux City's capacity is 70% of the group average, much lower than Des Moines. West Des Moines is 176% of the group's average. It has superior capacity. And Cedar Rapids is the closest, but not that close, number 2 with higher capacity, 116%. The first step in calculating effort is calculating the group weighted average property tax rate. And that's going to be the property tax levy divided by the total valuation times 1,000. So the group's average was 15.34. So effort for my communities is going to be calculated as our per capita levy divided by our per capita valuation times our average rate for the group. And remember that rate is on a per $1,000 worth of valuation basis. So I'm going to divide this by 1,000. And I want to do this calculation first. So I'm gonna nest this a little bit. And then I need to always put a $sign in front of that 17 because that is the line I'm always going to be dividing by. So my effort in Des Moines, let's express this as a percentage basis, is 110. So it has lower capacity yet higher effort. We're going to copy this down, and we can see now that we have a comparison. Des Moines has lower capacity, but it's using all of its effort. We would expect it to use 100% of its effort. Its property tax yield per capita is higher, so it's a higher effort. This is an indication of stress. If a community is over 105, 110, 115% on the effort side, we start thinking that they're having stress. Cedar Rapids has generally high capacity, and they're using it all up. Davenport, high capacity, high effort as well, higher effort. Sioux City, very low capacity, and they're using their capacity all up. Waterloo, again, lower capacity than average, higher effort. Iowa City, high capacity, but they also demonstrate some higher effort. So you see how this works out. And again, now let's go down and look at West Des Moines. Well, contrary to the expectation, by my measure, by this kind of measure, West Des Moines isn't a high property tax community. It has superior capacity, and it's only using 80% of that capacity. The lowest effort was in the city of Ames. It has 100% capacity. It's at the group average, and it's not using very much of that capacity on a comparative. So here are the very same calculations for the cities that I showed previously. Now, I'm doing this for fiscal 2012. These are a little bit older numbers, just 2 years older than the ones I just showed you. But again, it demonstrates for my communities, and that's what we have a lot of in Iowa that are from 2,500 to just under 10,000, that there's lots of variation in their respective ability to generate property taxes, as well as their effort, the effort that they expend trying to generate property taxes. Anamosa has low capacity, comparatively high effort. Albia has lower capacity, much higher effort than the group average. Comanche has high capacity and low effort. If we plotted this on an XY graph, you can see the relationship of tax effort to tax capacity. Generally speaking, there's a linear relationship downward. As capacity increases, the effort required to fund local government goes down. And lastly, I just want to compare an intermediate group of cities. I did, previous example was 2,500 to 10,000. The spreadsheet example was for cities 50,000 and over. And here's a calculation I did for some of Iowa's medium-sized cities. Again, their group averages are going to be 100. Burlington, Iowa, out on the Mississippi River. These are all mostly Mississippi River communities or near the Mississippi River. Their capacity to generate property taxes compared to all cities of this size statewide, 76. Their effort, though, they're using most of their capacity, darn near all of it. Same thing with Fort and Madison. constrained capacity. They're using all of their effort. Keokuk, close to average capacity for that group, for the larger group of cities of this size. And they're using a little bit more of their capacity than one would expect. They're a little bit higher effort, but we would consider this normal. Mount Pleasant, low capacity, low effort. Muscatine, average capacity, average effort. Ottumwa, extremely low capacity, extremely high effort by comparison. Compared to these communities, and this is an indication of a city in significant stress.